Welcome to The Difference. Today we have part 2 of our interview with James Moore and his work with the Jeffries Fund and the Road to Recovery. We're not going to say a lot of introduction because we did that last time. We hope you'll go back if you didn't and listen to the first episode. But today Jim is going to share a little bit more about his life and his vision of what he wants to do with the legacy of his son.
You are listening to The Difference, a presentation from The Hour, a 54-year ministry. Steve, first we started on radio, then went to television, then we went streaming online. So at Our Stream, you can watch our programming from all those years. So it's at thehour.org. And now, here we are, back doing audio again on this wonderful podcast called The Difference.
I'm Steve Castile, and today we're doing part 2 of a series of an incredible interview with James Moore. If you tuned in last week, I don't have to say anything else. We're here in Moore's Bike Shop again this week to continue telling an incredible story of heartbreak and healing, of challenge and learning. I want to take you back if you weren't here last week. All of us have family stories. All of us have family issues. And one of the issues that's besetting not only our community, but our country is the issue of addiction. The faith-based community has really wrestled with its response to that. And to be truly honest, we've been woefully lacking. Too many times that disease is listed as some kind of sin, when in fact the persons involved are sick and need our love and grace, and their families need our support. As Jim and I have had this conversation, and his passion to do something about it has kind of met my dream and creativity and the way it's affected our family. We've been drawn to take some steps, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Last week, Jim talked about his processing of his feelings and his anger and his frustration with some of the inadequacies in all the treatment processes and the responses that people have in the midst of this. And today he's going to talk about some of the steps he's begun to take to turn that anger into action, to take his experience and make it part of the road to recovery for those that are around him. Let's listen in.
The first thing that I decided to do when I wanted to become an advocate for those suffering from this disease that took Jeffrey was to go to DC for an event called Facing Addiction. And I checked in early at my hotel a few blocks from the White House. I had taken a shirt and had a print of Jeffrey's image put on the shirt, because I wanted other people there to know I was there for that reason, so that I could make connections with them and maybe learn from those that are further along in this than I was. So I check into the hotel, put on my shirt with Jeffrey's birth date and death date on it, and I walk down to the Washington Mall where this event's about to happen, and there are 5,000 other people milling about the mall waiting for this to begin. And I was stunned to see 5,000 other people had the same clever idea that I had of putting dead loved ones on their shirts. And what was so stunning was the number of people who had multiple family members on the same shirt. Multiple children, or a husband and a son. I was standing taking all that in, and out of the crowd a young lady walks up to me and she smiles and she points to Jeff. And then she points to the young man on her shirt, and they bore a striking resemblance. And without a word, she held out a wristband that said simply, "Not one more." And then she walked off with the wristbands into the crowd. And this was 2.5 years ago. That mother's prayer of "not one more" has been shattered over 140,000 times since then. And so that's what I try to convey when I talk to groups, that this is happening so fast that we need to act quickly, we need to act effectively to try to change it. The most important thing I think that we can do is to eradicate the stigma so that those who are embarrassed can step forward quickly, step into treatment, and begin the road to recovery. If we can simply make it comfortable for them to step forward so they don't feel like they're going to shame their families. I remember when Jeff went to the hospital, to the ER. The next morning, I was with him in his hospital room. He was talking to his fiance and trying to decide whether to do the detox for the next 5 days or check himself out and go right on back to school. He said, well, I guess I'm going to have to go to detox or my family's just going to think I'm a junkie. And I did not realize at that time the shame that came with that image. But the worst thing about addiction is what it does to your image of yourself. It's the only disease I know that makes a person literally hate who they are. And so if one thing first can be accomplished, if we can simply change the way that we view this as a disease and not a moral issue, it would make it so much easier for people who are at any stage of this to step forward and get help. I find myself, when I talk to groups, family groups in recovery, there is always that one person that is a patient, a client in the facility, that will speak up at some point and say, thank goodness for Jesus. I've got Jesus. All I need is Jesus. Jesus will get me through this. And I deeply respect the importance of a faith to get through something as tough as this. It is my faith that has gotten me to this point. But my response is, if you had any other disease, would you not want to take full advantage of all of the medical facilities and knowledge that God has made available to us? And once I had an elderly man who was the father of one of the patients. All you need is church. You get in church, you're going to be okay. You know, you got to find your right way. God's going to take care of this for you. And my response to him was, respectfully, sir, if you were out in the woods in your tree stand and you fell out and you looked down and saw your bones sticking through your boots and your buddies come to rescue you, are you going to ask them to take you to church or take you to the ER? And there was no answer coming, but we both knew the answer. So absolutely, a faith is critical to be able to get through this, but also using the knowledge that we have and trying to expand on that, and just loving each other regardless of the behaviors that we see coming from this disease. When Jan and I would have these long evening talks, after the plates had been taken away, and I commented once about, isn't it amazing after Jeff died, how many people came up to us, people that we barely knew, and said, oh, that's in our family too, it's so widespread. And I would get so frustrated because I would say, then why did you never talk about it before? And then I realized that as a family, we were no different. We never spoke about it before. It was our secret, and we didn't even tell our immediate family members where Jeffrey was or what was going on. It needs to be something that we are comfortable talking about. We need to understand that it is not because of a moral issue. It is not because of bad behavior. It is not because of a sin. As long as we have those views, there's going to be a big gap in being able to do anything to effectively support these people as they go through this. There was a gentleman named Sam Snodgrass that was a heroin addict for 20 years, and Sam found long-term recovery. He put himself through pharmacology school, and he understands the brain. He's got a PhD. And Sam wrote a letter to families talking about what addiction is like. He said, imagine if you haven't eaten for 5 days, not just since breakfast or a few hours, but 5 days. What would you be thinking about? What would you be focusing on? He says it's that brain's drive, that focus, that makes everything else fall away to allow you to focus on what you absolutely have to have for the moment. He said, and that's what addiction is like for us. But once we get what we need, that cycle starts itself again and repeats itself every 4 or 5 hours. And that's all that we are focused on. And in that, we become people we are not. We do things we know are wrong. We do things that we would never do otherwise. And so if we can understand, and he says, and we don't understand that. So we can't explain it to you when you ask, because we honestly don't understand. We just think we're going to die if we don't follow this pattern time and time again. So I ask groups, knowing the answer when I speak, I said, how many of you were able to afford 5 days of detox because your church held a bake sale to raise funds for you? They smile at each other, and I said, how many of you are here in this facility for 30 days because your community held a 5K run? And they get it. And I said, your church holds these bake sales for every other immediate need that someone in their congregation or community has. Your community holds these events for every other disease that we're trying to combat, that we're trying to eradicate. Why not for this disease? And then I began talking to a friend of mine, and he said, why not? Why not do it? And so that's where the concept of the Road to Recovery came from. And I want to be able to go into these facilities in the very near future and not be able to use that example anymore, because I can point to a community where that took place and where that probably would take place on a regular basis.
You know, there are people who, when you sit in the room with them, you understand you're sitting with somebody who is an authentic difference maker. One of the themes we've been weaving and will be weaving into the show is that there are people who make a difference in the world, and James Moore is one of those.
You know, Anthony, as I re-listen to Jim's conversation, it just re-inspires me for us to refocus on why we started this podcast.
Yes.
And that is, there's so many stories out there, so many things out there that are entertaining and mentally challenging. What we want to be is that heart tug that says, hey, you were put on this earth to do something to make a difference. That we are brothers and sisters who are made to care for each other, and that when Jesus told the parable of the sheep and the goats, he was really serious about the fact that he wants us to clothe the naked, visit the imprisoned, do the things that change the quality of life for those who are the least of these in many of our eyes. And so it's our joy to tell Jim's story and to begin telling the story of a lot of people who are doing that. In order for that to happen, you know, we as a ministry have to have funding. And, you know, we're always kind of hesitant to ask for that money, but we're not hesitant in this, that we're being advocates for folks who need their stories told and don't have the resources to do that. Right. And we've committed to try to be those people who tell those stories, who promote those ministries, who, even like we are with the Jeffries Fund, help them manage the resources in order that they can do what they do.
And like with their story, that was a life and death story.
Exactly.
And not every story that we tell or everything, there are inspirational things, but it is coming alongside, and some of these things is life and death. It's a living or dying inside kind of situation sometimes. And if we don't have those difference makers, we don't have those people like James who are making a difference, we run into problems. We run into situations where some people don't make it through. And so I'm not embarrassed about us saying this is important, what we're doing. Right. Being a voice of something good out there. There's so much bad, and how much online and how much on social are people complaining or being part of the problem. And when I taught, it was over and over, I tell my students, try to be a positive part of a negative world. And that's more true today than ever. Everything is so political, everything is so whatever, and my wife and I will look at each other and we say, we're just so tired of people. Right. Because it's messy and it's but those difference makers are the ones that people stay alive for, that stay alive, that give them a reason to keep pressing on, to keep struggling, to keep trying. And that's the kind of message that we want to get out there. And there may be people out there who want to help us do that, who say, that's something I could put my money behind. I want to be an encourager. I want to be a cheerleader.
Yeah, and I think that's where the irony of this, and this is not success theology, is that as we give ourselves away to help others, it changes us. I mean, we go back to Jimmy Carter, and so many times he would say, this is what I want. He had a fall at one of the sites, and showed up the next day to work, and people were saying, you didn't have to come. He said, no, have to. I want to be here. This is what I'm on this earth for.
Wow.
And that's what we want you to understand. You're not just here to get up and go to work or to show up and sit in a pew. You're here to help change the world. That's God's design. He has given us the privilege and the responsibility to care for each other in thoughtful and wonderful ways, in big and small ways.
Yes.
And there's a way for you. And you may not be able to go and be the face of Habitat for Humanity, but you might be able to give $25 a month to Jeffrey's Fund to help somebody make their way out of recovery and into the right kind of housing. Or you might be one who can give some money to the Hour that helps us keep telling these stories and comes alongside of us and becomes a part of our Difference Network that helps us get that message out. What we do want you to think about as we close out is, have you let your life become so small that there's nothing outside of your own stuff that you do? And that every day you're going to and from a very self-contained life. That's not the life God calls us to. The life God calls us to is to look around and see the need and give ourselves the joy of giving ourselves to somebody else. And that's our prayer for you here at The Difference. Yeah. And so we hope you'll consider supporting. We hope you'll consider your own reflection about what is it that God is calling me to do to make a difference. We thank you for joining us, and we hope, as always, you'll live loved.
You've been listening to The Difference, a presentation of The Hour. The Difference is made in conjunction with and partnership with the Institute for Southern Storytelling at Mississippi College. To find out more about the Institute and ways that we are partnering and mentoring young lives through storytelling, filmmaking, and more, visit us at southernstorytelling.mc.edu. And for more resources from The Hour and from The Difference, check us out at our Hour Stream platform with the streaming content at thehour.org. I'm Anthony Thaxton. Thanks for joining us.